The duality between like free will and determinism, that notion doesn't even compute in the natural state. Completely losing control, just being that fill in the blank that you can't describe. It feels like losing control. It feels like you absolutely just have no control. But at the same time, it just feels like you have absolute control. It feels like you can't rush forward, you can't step backward, and you can't stand still either. But where's that point? It's the one that's truly gone but not yet arrived. When you're beyond coming and going, every single moment is flow state. And doing will be indistinguishable from non-doing. It feels like you've never gone anywhere, but the whole world is moving and shape-shifting, but you are that world. See, the feeling of non-doership only arises through doership. You gotta transcend them both, that's the middle way. Someone asked the Buddha if there's a self, he didn't reply. And he asked again, is there no self? He didn't reply either. See, the Buddha never taught no self because he never taught the self. In this video, I'm going to talk about how a lot of people are still suffering after awakening because they don't fully grasp the depth of dependent origination and the middle way, and various other reasons for why you're still suffering after non-duality. The difference between insights, realization, and experiences. I'm going to use Bruce Lee of consciousness as an example of how to set your contemplative CrossFit goals on the existence of God. And finally, I'm going to offer you what I think is the most plausible explanation for how consciousness and the universe come into existence.
Yeah, this is great.
When you deconstruct and dissolve every particle in the universe, it also feels like the same insight that comes from that is that you are constructing every particle in the universe.
Wonderful one.
Thank you.
Like being controlled and not being controlled is just a thought. That's why this thing transcends the duality between free will and determinism. Even the synchronicity versus not is just how it is. Am I like poking the world because I see signs of synchronistic events that's happening? Or is the world poking me? See, my moment-to-moment experience feels like you're eating the universe while the universe is swallowing you. But are you inside the universe, or is the universe inside you? You can say they're codependent or rise. You can say it's neither or both. But even that's a view. Every perspective that your mind can formulate about reality is intrinsically imperfect, because it can never grasp the essence of reality, which is empty. Ultimate reality is empty, the Buddha is empty, the Four Noble Truths are empty, Nirvana is empty, even emptiness is empty of emptiness. Does God exist or not exist? Arguing that God exists is flawed. Arguing that God does not exist is equally flawed. Stating that God both exists and not exists is flawed. Stating that God neither exists nor not exists is also flawed. All those views are just views in extremity. There's no wrong view, but if I can say what a quote-unquote wrong view is a view in an absolute. The thing about views is not which view is correct, because ultimately all views are fabrications. You know, they're neither real nor not real, and they're all dependent on cause and conditionings and are impermanent. So the key is not to grasp onto any views and just use whatever views is pragmatic in this moment. However way the universe shapes into itself, and then however your mind chooses to interpret that through different lenses, whether that's a lens of, oh, the empowerment state, I manifest everything, I have the intention to manifest anything. During certain contexts, certain circumstances, that view is the more pragmatic one. And other times it's just letting everything happen, and then you're not in control at all. That just depends on which view that is being used. Okay. Yeah. Whatever view you're coming from is right, quote unquote, right in this moment, yeah. Like ultimately. Yeah. Because that is just the way that the universe shapeshifting itself into this view.
The shift. Tell me about your
big shift. Well, it was what you had said about the concentration power is what I needed, because...
So before this, you never heard of Vipassana?
No, I had never heard of Vipassana. I had definitely accepted non-duality. I was, like, if I had to put it somewhere in the map, I would say it was like the God consciousness phase. I am everything. I'm everywhere. There's no limits to this. It's infinite, right? And that was my experience and it was definitely like blissful at times. The problem was though is that I didn't understand what emptiness meant. I was more so on like fullness, and anytime anything would contradict that, like perfection, or something would be really uncomfortable, or like things would happen in my life that would trigger me.
Yeah. So
Especially
there's
with,
the spaciousness, but there's like still like solidity at the
Yes.
center. So when something
there was
gets
solidity
triggered,
at the center,
Yeah,
and I felt like I had to like defend almost like this version of reality
Yeah,
that
that's exactly
I had
it.
started to wake up to,
God
and
consciousness
so.
space.
If you investigate the background of your experience, there's usually a sense of doubt, the sense of something's just not quite right, dissatisfaction. And what is that? It's just a thought. It's a resistance to the what is. And this resistance can be translated to wanting reality to be a certain way, when in fact there's no other version of reality other than whatever's already happening right now. You want to give yourself and other people and reality the freedom to be exactly what they are. When that happens, everything gets dissolved and everything starts vibrating and morphing into each other. All form and distance collapse. Labeling a tree as a tree is actually coming from resistance and doubt. If you let the tree be as it is no longer a tree, but empty luminosity. And this doubt can also be translated to the inclination to hold a view, or the desire to know. And Shi Yang said doubt is the number one barrier to enlightenment. See, true nature is penetrating each other so thoroughly that there's no gap, no distance. There's absolutely no room for doubt. It's impossible to have any regrets in your life. You have complete trust for surrendering. You clearly see that every single particle, quote unquote, of this infinite fractal is precisely and exactly in the right place, unfolding all by itself, where both cause and effect happens linearly and simultaneously at the same time. See, this Anatta realization is something so unshakable that the Buddha himself can come down from the clouds and tell you otherwise, and you still know to the deepest essence of your bone that this is the truth of what you are. And again, this is not intellectual or conceptual knowing. This realization is just what's always been the case. And there's usually a shift in identity that comes with it. See, you can have perceptual shifts and experiences, bliss, mystical experiences, whatever, and still don't have your insight stabilized. See, realization includes all the experiences. But you can actually have one without the other. Usually they go together because, in a sense, everything is an experience. But it's better to look at perceptual shifts, experiences, and vast spaciousness as a byproduct of insight or realization than the other way around. Even after Anatta realization, MTCB fourth path, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people still haven't completely eliminated their suffering because, number one, they haven't grasped dependent origination and emptiness. And the two sides of the same coin. If you understand DO, you understand emptiness, and vice versa. And the middle way is the same insight. See, emptiness is not a substance. Emptiness is not a substratum or a background. Emptiness is not light. Emptiness is not consciousness or awareness. Emptiness is not the absolute. Emptiness does not exist on its own. Objects do not consist of emptiness. Objects do not arise from emptiness. Emptiness of the I does not negate the I, see, neither self nor no self. Emptiness is not the feeling that results when no objects are appearing in the mind. Emptiness is not nihilism, or that things don't exist. Meditating on emptiness does not consist of quieting the mind.
So when you look at that,
The Buddha said, if you see dependent origination, you see the Dharma. If you see the Dharma, you see dependent origination. Especially the 12 links. I'm going to put some links in the description box about how karmas and causes and conditioning create suffering, and a step-by-step link to the cessation of suffering. And that really is the key cornerstone to dissolve the last traces of solidity. See, that's the difference between merely waking up to non-duality to complete liberation. See, without a clear insight into how everything is dependent on reason through conditions, it's very easy to verify phenomenons into a permanent ground that the self can cling on to. If things come to an existence only through the right causes and conditions, And if you alter just a tiny bit of any of these conditions, the whole thing collapses. So you can't hold on to anything even if you try. This is the impermanence. And if everything is co-arising, then nothing has inherent existence apart from this codependent process. This is emptiness. Quantum physics started to tap into that, the observer's effect, and how things come into existence only through the process of interaction. Ultimately, dependent origination is also empty. It's just a tool. It's a raft to get you to the other shore, but you gotta throw away the raft after you reach the other side. Even though the search is over and that there are no more quantum ships, the development and deepening after Anatta is beyond any categorization of stages of insights, levels, or maps. And it's really quite profound that you just can't put into words. A lot of people just don't know there's further development to go, so I'm telling you right now. You climb to the peak of the mountain, the way down, even though it's completely effortless, you still gotta come down to become the whole mountain, bro. Another reason people lack the concentration power to detect and dissolve the last traces of residues and contractions that are still hovering around. Another major reason is that, like I said in my last video, non-dual awareness can be so boundless and vast and blissful that it can suppress some of your feels. They refuse to do emotional work. The spiritual bypass with, oh, I'm not the body, there's nobody here, a view in extremity. When you're stuck in the absolute, it's easy to overlook morality on the conventional level, and you wonder why karma comes back and bites you in the ass. Or the rarefied awareness as being the source of you in extremity. It's also very easy to get hung up in the facade of perfectionism. True perfection happens when you accept all of your imperfections. Welcome everything with self-acceptance and unconditional love. And finally, people become teachers too fast. They keep verifying the role of a spiritual guru without deepening their insight, or they're too caught up in bliss or experiences.
The emptiness part, I was like, okay, I understand God consciousness, but like what does emptiness mean? But then I was watching, I think it was the Consciousness Coaching 4 or something like that, and you were talking to one of your clients how like some people just like naturally will attain certain insights into the nature of reality, but then sometimes you need that industrial strength of the concentration power
to hold it, or at least like
to be able to hold,
or
exactly,
dissolve the rest of the center.
Right. And so for me, there was still a solidity in the center.
It's just as important to see that samatha is vipassana, is to relax and see that relaxation is concentration and just letting go. Yeah, just look at how relaxed those martial artists have to be to throw a really potent punch. And this is a quote by Bruce Lee. When my opponent contract, I expand. When they expand, I contract. And when an opportunity arises, I don't hit, it hits by itself.
At that point, it was easy for me to scan my body. It was easy for me to but once I started hearing the sounds and then seeing the sights, and it all kind of merged into one sense door very quickly for me. I was able to jump from beginning Vipassana to the kind of God consciousness or Vipassana. Yeah.
Vipassana from God consciousness.
That's when I had this big shift where it was oh my God, there isn't center to this. And the reason that was so significant, it's you realize there's nothing to realize.
There's no one there to even realize nothingness or...
Exactly, yeah.
It's kind of beyond oneness and emptiness and separation.
Yeah, it includes all of it because I think it is one in the sense that it's a verb, but the second it becomes a noun, is where I feel you run into issues, because a noun implies something solid, something that inherently exists, but a verb is more, it escapes that infinite shape shifting out of nothing, essentially. You were running toward me, I was getting some ancestral vibes, the whole tribe's coming for you with a big javelin or something.
Like your shirt. In a sense, this is a representation of the all-seeing eye, right? It's a God mind's perspective.
Yeah.
And then it's back then we have we need fire. Our ancestors would hold torches, then they can see, right? And this camera, it's almost like a torch, a virtual torch, so you can see perspectives that otherwise wouldn't be possible.
So then my mind jumped to something like Assassin's Creed, the video game, where they go into a VR animator of their ancestors' memories, and they can relive it through this VR. through the DNA. Instead of like a javelin or like a spear or like a sword or something, it's like this
It's
thing, the 360-degree
awareness. You transcend time and space with this.
And when you're timeless, you have all time at your disposal.
Like I said, like parkour of the mind, and it's like it also reminds me of like, you know, like ancient like Asian people like with like swords and like martial artists. They would just go, like,
you said I look like a martial artist.
yeah, a little
holding
bit. Yeah, so it's both, and
It's
it's also very extremely futuristic too. You're kind of using the sword or the weapon of the mind to like slay away the layers of delusion, but at the same time discovering and uncovering the unseen territory of the mind and perception. And just like an MMA fighter, he has to be trained in all those different techniques. But when he's in a cage, when he's fighting, spontaneously, all his MMA AI just come out and use whatever technique that's necessary for this particular moment. Yeah, that's why I call my coaching service now like Contemplative CrossFit. Yeah, CC, yeah, it's a merging of all the different techniques from different technologies, contemplative technology, different traditions, and also merges like fitness, art, music, and philosophy.
The difference between
The mind and body, solidity, and liquid air.
Right.
You know,
It's a
silence and
vibratory
sound.
difference.
Silence and sound, form and emptiness. It's all
Yes.
just vibratory differences.
So, you know, when you objectify, right, you say, oh, I am this, I identify as this, and you are that, right? You're creating an artificial separation. And so to say, oh, this is higher value than this, it's all only relative.
Any kind of line or distinction between anything, it's just vibrations too.
Yeah.
That's why I say there's
Speaking
no
of-
level of enlightenment or level of consciousness. There's only levels of the mind relative to
Right.
the infinity.
Exactly.
Yeah, or
It's
how
like-
much condition you dissolve. That's
Right.
the level. But that no level includes infinity numbers of levels as well.
Yeah.
But it also transcends that.
Mhm.
But the relative is the absolute too. So like
Right,
the
right.
lines is actually just a part of the oneness. It's actually indistinguishable from oneness. Because like in order for there to be a line in the first place, it presupposes unity. Line only exists in relative to that which it divides.
It doesn't exist isolated or in a vacuum. Nothing does.
Yeah, even nothingness itself is not like a ground. That's why I always say any kind of a source, like this absolute awareness, is also the process of this codependent rising processes. Now, if you look at the 12 links of different origination, consciousness is just one of those links that are connected to every other link. It's not the source or the center. See, awareness cannot exist without the object of awareness and contact between the sense organ and the object. So both the object and awareness are intrinsically empty apart from this interaction. So consciousness is like fire. For there to be fire, you need the intention of setting something on fire, which is part of the impersonal cosmic condition of the universe, and the matchstick and the matchbox and the contact of the striking of the stick and the matchbox in order for there to be a fire. Without any of those conditions, there's no fire. And the fire in turn becomes aware of how the fire is created, and it sets further intention on whether or not to make more fires or not. See how this dependent origination is just one loopy loop? And I'm only talking about a few conditions here. Take any object, like the matchbox or the matchstick. And imagine the countless strings that have to interact for those objects to come into existence. I'm not only talking about the physical parts of any object, but the billions and billions of neural networks in billions of people's brains. Imagine the infinite and infinite webs of causes and conditions that have to happen for all times, quote unquote, past and the future, for this precise moment to happen the way it is. And this present moment is connected to the past and the future. So every single thought and sensation that you have is not just connected to the whole universe, but is the whole universe. When there's a grain of sand, there's the whole cosmos. Fractals on fractals on fractals, all giving birth and destroying each other simultaneously. Deep breath. I think this is a more satisfactory explanation of consciousness and the nature of reality than idealism, materialism, solipsism, or panpsychism. It's like the merging of all the isms without taking a particular view, see? Now, if you truly grasp this interconnectedness, it's very hard to take anything personally. Blame will be completely erased from your mental landscape.
In nature, there's no natural formation of a straight line.
Yeah, that's what Alan Watts said. There's
that's-
only wiggly.
right.
There's
It's
only wiggly lines
things.
in
Even
reality,
just look
yeah.
at the human body. There's no straight lines in this body.
The dependent origination follows the natural law of cause and effect, or action and reaction, in relation to all physical and mental processes and phenomena in the universe without exception. Events in the universe arise neither due to chance nor creation by a creator, but due to the existence of certain supporting conditions. By altering those conditions, one has the opportunity to change the outcome of that process, going beyond the duality between free will and determinism. This also ends a debate between the existence of God and Darwin's theory of evolution, or even a creationism. You see that none of those ideas fully grasp the whole picture. Things arise neither through complete randomness nor with a purpose. It's very easy to get stuck in one or the other view, right? Oh, there's no doership, there's nothing to do. And then you can easily spiritual bypass. On the other side of the extreme, you have the empowerment view, right? Oh, everything is my manifestation. I have the power to manifest and create anything. It's very easy to ratify the self that way. Or that you blame yourself for things that happen that isn't really in your control, but neither are they not in your control, see? Even though DO can be just another view that you cling on to, if you truly understand dependent origination, it's very difficult to take DO as a view and cling on to it. Because it's too slippery. You can't put your fingers anywhere. But it is one of the most efficient tools that I find to deconstruct not just suffering, also transcend all dualities. Another common duality is between, oh, I don't know anything, everything's unknowable, it's all mystery, versus, oh, I know everything about the nature of reality. You stay in the middle way, transcending the duality between knowing and not knowing, meaning and meaninglessness, self or others. Also the duality between existence and non-existence, somethingness and nothingness. When things arise only through the right sets of conditions, with each of the conditionings being emptied apart from interactions with more causes and conditions. Like the rainbow, you can't say that they're there, neither can you say that they're not there. You can apply this to the self. Good and evil co-arise, and life only comes from death and vice versa. One metaphor to understand DO is dominoes or music. One domino falls and another falls and another falls, right? If you identify with just the falling of one domino, they're suffering. But if you can see that all the dominoes codependent arise, the first domino is dependent arising through, the last domino, and every single domino is connected to every other dominoes. And then you see this picture emerges out of the falling of all the dominoes. You see that individual dominoes or clusters of dominoes gives rise to the whole picture. And the whole gives rise to the parts and vice versa, transcending that duality between the one and the many. The dominoes won't fall in this way without that picture. And the picture wouldn't exist without all the dominoes collapsing on each other. And you can take this analogy to the entirety of the space-time fabric. Is space and time linear or not linear? There's no cause and effect, but at the same time there is. When I lift weights, it feels like the universe lifting itself. Even though the intention to contract is just happening by itself too. But that still doesn't take away the subjective feeling of the means to contracting.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that feeling of being in control and asserting power is just what's happening in the universe, is just part of the cosmic condition as well. Certain cosmic condition makes your body mind feels like you're in control. Certain cosmic condition makes your body mind feels like it's not in control. But it's the same thing. They're both just impersonal cosmic conditions of the universe that are connected to the infinite other webs of cosmic conditions of the universe, which is connecting my muscle fibers to my brain, to the weights, and all the strings of this interest net is interacting and interconnected to the entire gym and all the bros and thoughts inside the gym, and it stretches to encompass the entire universe. And these links of dependent rising loops back to my muscle flexing and lifting the weights in a simultaneous and spontaneous fashion. This is why they call the direct experience of dependent origination total insertion. It feels like every single part of this entire universe is just working together in a perfect cosmic symphony to make this moment absolute perfection.